Today we've got one of the wildest sneakers to drop this entire year. It's got a ton of really unique details, but also has people confused, so let's figure it out. So here we have the box, and it's actually pretty dope. It's all over bright blue, and you've got the Nike branding, which appears to be all over hand-drawn. You've got the Air Flea 2 branding, a couple yin and yang logos on it, but let me pop the top and show you guys one of the craziest shoes this entire year, the CPFM Air Flea 2. So a couple other things that you get in the box starts with this very premium feeling dust bag. Tons of embroidery on the front of it with the Nike branding. Of course, you've got the Flea 2 and then some huge patches. You've also got a pack of 5 different pins, some Nike logos, some spiders, and another yin and yang logo. And they all stick onto the upper of the shoes using a button style attachment. But here we have the pair of shoes looking absolutely wild. Now, before we jump into the plethora of different details on this pair of sneakers, let me quickly run through all of the release details. So these dropped kind of out of nowhere on October the 18th through CPFM's website. All of the leaks and rumors leading up to the release were saying that these were gonna drop at some time during the holiday season. However, CPFM just took to Instagram, posted an ad and said, yo, these things are dropping tomorrow, October the 18th. Now, the very next day after the release on the CPFM's website, Nike SNKRS app did a shock drop for these out in the US. So as of right now, the only release that has happened for these things has only been in the US, so I'm not entirely sure if we're actually even gonna get a worldwide release. But of course, if that does end up happening, I will keep you guys updated. Now, of course, this is not the only colorway of this pair of shoes. There's actually 2. This is the all over black alabaster one, and there's also a faded spruce, which is actually pretty interesting. It's mismatched in color. One's slightly more greenish, the other one's slightly more bluish, and they both retail for $220, which I actually don't think is that unreasonable given the amount of incredible extras and details that you get on here. So, the first thing you're gonna realize getting this pair of shoes is that they are super big and super chunky. They're also pretty heavy as well. But I think the biggest concern that people had with this pair of shoes was, of course, the sizing. So let's talk about that. So these do actually run very, very big, which is not something that has never happened before when it comes to CPFM shoes. In fact, the CPFM Flea 1 was actually cancelled due to sizing issues. So what I ended up doing was buying a full size down. I typically wear a US 9, so this is a US 8, and they fit me pretty much exactly how a US 9 would typically fit me in other Nikes. I mean, it's pretty surprising because there's no other Nikes that I would fit a US 8. This is literally a full size too big. So if you already ordered these things, hopefully you did adjust for the sizing. I'm not entirely sure if the Nike SNKRS app mentioned it or not. But on the flip side, if you missed out and you were looking to purchase these things after the fact, then yeah, I would recommend going a full size down. I think the fact that leading up to the release of these things, there was so many conflicting opinions on the sizing. Some people were saying it's 2 sizes too big, 1.5 sizes. Some people saying that it fits true to size. That's obviously what got a lot of people concerned about the sizing. So hey, if you have a pair of these things, if you bought a pair and yours came in, drop it down in the comment section what you did with your sizing and what fits you. Cactus Plant Flea Market and Nike have teamed up and collaborated on a bunch of sneakers in the past. And they've pretty much got a name for themselves of making some very out of the box designs. We had those crazy Air Maxes. The Air Forces were probably actually one of the most toned down collaborations that they've done with Nike. Of course, we had the bedazzled Dunks, and then came the more recent, much wilder designs, which was the Flea 1. Now, there was 2 different versions of the Flea 1. There was the cancelled one due to the sizing issues, and then there was the overgrown Grinch pair. What's so crazy is that all of these previous CPFM collaborations resell for a small fortune. And even though the resale price on these things isn't great, it's now one of the lowest reselling CPFM and Nike sneakers that you can buy at about $400. So I don't know, maybe a decent amount of people managed to get these things when it came to the release. Let me know down in the comment section. Obviously, I'm not in the US. So usually collaborations are just kind of a remix of an existing Nike silhouette. But these things seem completely unique. The Flea 1 was a remix on a pair of Dunks, even though that one looked super unique and completely different from a pair of actual Dunks. The only pair that this slightly resembles is the ACG Nike Mountain Fly 2. That's a relatively recent sneaker, has a similar kind of wrapping around midsole to it where it kind of peels up onto the toe box. So that very well could be what the base of this sneaker is in terms of the idea of the design. design. But then there's also the fact that these do kind of look like a Balenciaga Defender. Regardless, it does a very unique job at separating itself from both of those shoes. So as you can see, this pair of sneakers has no laces. All you get is these two giant Velcro straps that actually do a pretty good job at locking your foot down. Now, obviously, one of the most prominent features with this pair of shoes is going to be the fact that it's covered in all of these poppers or button style attachments. Now, obviously, you use those buttons to attach all of those different pins that you get, like the Nike logos and the spiders, but it's also used to hold down this giant Nike swoosh. So this thing literally just pops off super easily, and what I found with using this pair of shoes is that it's actually a little bit harder to attach and move around than I initially thought it was going to be. Like you can see on the back of this Nike swoosh, it has a very organized array of these attachments. The slightly annoying thing with this Nike swoosh is that it almost feels like each of these attachments is just slightly a millimeter out, so it doesn't perfectly align. Now, it could be because these buttons or these poppers are on the actual strap, so maybe they move around a little bit. Every time you want to put your foot inside of these things, if you need to take off the straps, then that's going to be readjusted every single time. It's also slightly impractical that you have to remove this every single time you want to put your foot inside. You end up fiddling around with this Nike swoosh to reattach it every time you want to walk out the door. But obviously, one of the big pros of having a reattachable Nike swoosh is that you can wear it without it. You can actually, because there's so many different poppers, you can place it almost anywhere you want on the shoe. You can swap them around and have a reverse Nike swoosh on here if you want. You can put it upside down. You can pretty much just have fun with it. But one thing that is for absolute certain is that this Nike swoosh is absolutely massive. If you did go for the all over black colorway, is that the Nike swoosh is really the center of attention with it. Like maybe if you went for the faded spruce color, it's a little bit more mixed up, so you kind of feel the whole shoe. But when you're wearing these things, it almost looks like you're just wearing a Nike swoosh. Now, speaking of branding, you do get a lot of other parts which are also branded. You've got a small Nike swoosh on the forefront right by the toe box. You've got some more Flea 2 branding on the tongue. The double pull tabs that you get, there's some more Flea 2 and Air all embroidered in there as well. The midsole is definitely one of the craziest parts about it, and it literally wraps itself almost around the upper as well. So it comes up into a point around the back and then obviously rounds up onto the toe box. Now it is kind of this waffle iron style traction pattern or kind of a tire. One of the coolest things is when you flip it underneath, you've got a glow-in-the-dark footprint. Now it's obviously not something that you're going to see very often because you're going to be wearing it, but when it does glow in the dark, it looks pretty cool. All in all, I went from being pretty apprehensive about this pair of shoes to now really liking them. These are definitely a pair of shoes that I'm going to be adding to my collection and rotation. I think it's really cool that Nike is collaborating with a brand that is not afraid of making some extremely unique and wild designs. Sometimes it really does just feel like it's Jordan 1 after Jordan 1, dunk after dunk, and as much as a lot of us love those shoes, it is really nice to have something like this that's just refreshing. In terms of styling this pair of shoes, what I found is that they kind of look a lot better when you're wearing baggier pants. I think it looks really, really good with wider hemmed pants. Now, you can go through the whole range. I wore some joggers, cargo pants, jeans. They all look pretty solid. It's only when I started wearing like the slimmer fit ones or shorts where they really showed off how super chunky they were. So yeah, I think the baggier the pants, the almost better. And I think with a solid pair of cargos, these things look really, really good. But that's just my opinion. And of course, I would love to know yours. Drop it down in the comment section. What do you think of the CPFM Air Flea 2? And if you want to stay up to date at all of the latest upcoming sneakers, make sure you check out that video over there.